This conference will now be recorded.
Hey guys, we'll get started. Okay, Zach, you may rejoin. I'm starting now. Meanwhile, others are expected to join. Maybe it's too early for us in India or some challenges with people in US. So, anyways,
This conference will now be recorded.
okay. So, welcome guys to the another DevOps session. So today we'll be discussing more of about why DevOps and what exactly is DevOps. There have been a lot of discussions in the market regarding the DevOps, and people are going gaga about, and just have a clear and transparent understanding in terms of how to one migrate from the current technology to DevOps, and how challenging or how easy it is for somebody to learn and basically adopt to the set of principles which DevOps provide. So I think the institute has already sent you the course and curriculum which I happen to prepare for this batch. The first thing first, I just wanted to um, articulate on the first topic, that is just the introduction of DevOps and what I'll be covering in that. So more or the less, we will be discussing just an overview of understanding how and things fall in place for DevOps. So I'll just read out the topic so that we can have a brief understanding of each of them. So I'll be discussing on like what exactly is DevOps and what is the definition of it, and considering the previous software development life cycles and the existing uh, methodologies provided. So how and where DevOps pitches in, and also just to understand the main objectives why DevOps was brought in into the market, and also how do one adapt to infrastructure as code, and also if let's say just addressing the question which I just happened to say, like one wants to migrate to DevOps and currently he's a tester, he's a developer or support guy. So what are the prerequisites for one to learn and understand something so that it is easy for them to choose this path. Thirdly, we'll be discussing overview of the tools that I'm going to have a demo of or a study of in this entire batch. So basically, it's all regarding the tools, and also the last and four very most important thing is to understand how the continuous integration, continuous deployment, and continuous development works, and also continuous automation works. So these are the things that we are going to discuss in today's session. This is more or less of a theoretical and introductory based session. So I hope I'll be addressing all your questions. So if you have anything in the discussion, just stop me anywhere and I'll be happy to address. So starting from the beginning, before I do, I'll be happy to share my screen. So now I'm going to do that. Please confirm if you're able to see. Just give me one moment. Yeah, I have started sharing the screen. Please confirm if you guys are able to see it.
Yes, I can able to see your screen.
All right. Thank you so much, Ashim, Gopinath. So, yeah, let me just minimize this. Yeah, that's better for me. So, on my screen, as you can see, that we have something with regards to the SDLC. That is nothing but the waterfall model which was previously used across all the organizations. So what is SDLC and what is Waterfall? What is Agile? So let's say you are a niche non-technical person. You're coming from a no background. So how do you make sure that these things are well understood is first and foremost thing to understand what is SDLC and why is there an essentiality or necessity for SDLC to be understood or adapted by any projects. The abbreviation goes like software development life cycle. So if I am a project manager, if I am working in a project, so is it necessary for me to adapt to any of the life cycle model? So I would say yes, it is necessary for you to articulate or make sure that all the things in your project are working good and all the pieces are well connected. You need to have something in place in terms of an SDLC model. So what is SDLC and how things work is SDLC basically is a set of rules that is provided by a structure, and those structures are named as different models. Let's say there we have a lot of SDLC model, and I have listed down two of them on my screen. One is the waterfall and the other is agile, because there have been a lot of projects previously who were adopting or inviting a waterfall model into their projects, and they have surfaced some challenges in their projects, and then they switch to agile. And there are some projects which are still in verge of switching to agile. So let us understand what is a waterfall model. I hope I have given some basic understanding of what is SDLC and what is the essentiality of it. So basically, waterfall model is, as you can see on my screen, there are some phases and steps listed down to each team in a project. Okay, let's say there is a big project and there are some requirements of the project. Let's say I have let's take an example. Okay, there is the metro rail construction project. Okay, so any city that does not have any scope of metro rail project, what the government does is they seem to approach a company or people who are expert in laying down the metro rail projects perfectly in other cities, and they will give them the contract. So previously, let's say that consulting project or that company which is expected to take this project were working on waterfall model. Okay, now the government is giving the contract to a company which is working as waterfall model. So what they will do first is they will gather all the requirement from the government, as in how long the track should be and how many stops should be, how many trains should be, and how many number of passengers are expected to travel, etc., etc., etc. And then the designing is from which place to which place the diversion should happen, and then the implementation. So what I'm trying to tell you is, in the waterfall model, every step will happen one after the other. Okay, let's say if they are working on gathering the requirement, they will sole and whole work on the requirement gathering only. They will not concentrate on any other stuff. Likewise, if they are working on designing, they'll only concentrate on designing. Okay, and it's time for them to implement the requirements and the designs which they have prepared. So all these prototypes they will try to implement that. So slowly they'll try to um, lay down some pillars, some construction work, some holes are digged, and then they verify the process is working or not. Let us say in the phase of verification, some issue happened. What is the issue, sir? For example, let us say that while they were constructing the track, they did not notice that there is a flyover which is going to cross them. There is a flyover which is going to cross them. So what they will do, they will not change their track for only that segment. The best and the worst part of waterfall model is they will again switch back to requirement gathering. Instead of fixing only that part, they will again switch back to the requirement gathering. If they are accommodating, or if they are going through waterfall model, they'll again go to the government and say, hey, we forgot that there is a flyover, we did not take that into consideration, so we might have to start from the scratch. So what happens here with this is there are two biggest challenges. One challenge is not only you are wasting time, but also you are uh, you're being a troublesome to the party which is giving you a project, or to the consultant project. Okay, likewise, you are not putting all the documents at a single go, and again, as I said, you're wasting time. So instead of this, what happened, how the SDLC model uh, evolved in such a way that you overcome all these challenges is they understood the challenges by waterfall model, and they proposed something called agile model. So how different it is, it is more or less exactly the same, but there is one technique involved in it. Let us consider again the same metro rail project. So if I am working, if that company is working through agile model instead of waterfall, if they are working through agile model, so what they will do, they'll the, the government approaches them, then they'll say, hey, this is the metro rail project that you guys have to work on. What they'll say is, fine, sir, your city is so vast, so what we'll do is we'll define, or we will divide our project into different phases: phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Okay, let's work on phase 1 now. Parallelly, this part of my team will work on phase 2, and this part of my team will work on phase 3. So what is happening is, instead of starting from the scratch, you have divided your team to work on three different phases, and collectively the work will be done efficiently. Secondly, when you approach, I mean, the company, the consultant company, they'll approach the government and they'll say, hey, we need some requirement, and as soon as you give some requirement, we'll start creating the designs, creating the templates, creating the prototypes. As we feel that we are done with this set of requirement, we'll start that implementation. So when I'm saying this set of requirement, what is the name of this set of requirement? It is known as sprint. So you define a sprint. What is a sprint, sir? It is just a terminology just to let you know that it is a time window. Let us say 2 weeks of a sprint, or 10 days of a sprint, or 7 days of a sprint. It depends on project to project. Okay, in some duration of time, you have defined a sprint, and you'll make sure that all the requirements are gathered. So what happens here is, the best part of agile model is, if something went wrong, you will fix then and there. You don't have to go back to the step one and then analyze, okay, I have to start from scratch or something. The best part is, if something got broken in phase one, you fix there in phase one. Instead of going back to requirement, you fix there in the implementation part, development part, or testing part. If that happens in phase two, you do that in phase two. Okay, now I think things are pretty much clear. So why is there a need to understand SDLC is, before you understand DevOps, the prerequisites, the things in and out, you should understand how a project works and where does DevOps fit in. Okay, this is how a life cycle of an application happens, and it is very crucial for us to understand where we fit as a DevOps team. Okay, now if you see on my screen, there's a traditional waterfall approach, agile development approach, and then DevOps approach. It's clear and understood that traditional waterfall model was having some unstable features that the projects were not willing to accommodate, which were overcome by agile in terms of product fixes or time consumption or whatever. Okay, now the DevOps approach says whatever the change is happening should be done immediately on the go. Whose responsibility is, sir? It is the DevOps responsibility to make sure that, okay, this bug is traced. this issue is happened. So whose responsibility is to ensure that all these changes are effectively implemented? DevOps responsibility. Okay. Now, operations needs to be agile and development needs to be agile in terms of uh, making sure that things are in place. So now let us get more technical and understand how DevOps fit in. Okay, this is more of like understanding from the project management perspective. So if you have any questions for me, you can stop in before I pitch to the next slide. Any questions for me?
No, we are good.
Perfect. Thank you. So now, this is a very crucial slide, so I request all of you to pay attention. And this slide perhaps give you a better understanding of DevOps and where do we fit in the entire flow of the application's life cycle. See, first, if an application is being built in the project, there are some teams which handle the life cycle of an application. I'm not talking about the entire project. I'm talking about a simple application. Let's say if I have an Amazon application in my mobile, so there has been a life cycle that this application has gone through, right? So let's forget in terms of requirement gathering and everything. So let's not focus from the business analyst perspective or PMO perspective. Let's start from being technical. So let's quickly switch our minds to be a little technical. So now if I give you a requirement, say, hey, I want to develop a mobile application and that name would be Amazon, and I have e-commerce kind of stuff in the requirement, and you have to build it. So what you will do is you will gather all the requirement and you will start building the application. What you will do, firstly you'll build the interface, that which is nothing but the UI and the backend and then the database, correct? And then what happens is when the application is built, you will test it in your local laptop. Okay, now I repeat one more time. You gather the information, you start coding. Who is you here? You are the developer. Okay. Now you as a developer will start writing all the lines of code. You will test it in your local laptop or local workstation. And when it works perfectly fine, so you will say, hey, uh, now I am the project manager. You will come up and say, hey, I've written all the requirement into the code and it works perfectly in my local. So, me as a project manager, what I'll do is, what is the purpose of storing that in your local? I want to store it somewhere remotely so that everybody in the team can access. I'm sorry, everybody in the team can access. Now, quickly, it is time for us to pay a little attention now. Okay. Now, there are two things. One is he has written some set of code, some lines of code, and that code is residing in his laptop. Secondly, he has tested everything and it works perfectly in his local. So, what if the other developer wants to uh, do something on top of his code? What he'll have to do is he'll have to copy the code from his laptop, developer A laptop, to developer B's laptop. So let us say if the code is too much, then it might take time. It might sometimes the copy is insecure. Sometimes the code get lost. Some there are lots of risks and hazards. What happens here is, please pay attention. What happens here is you are requested to store the code somewhere remotely instead of your local laptop. So, what is that place's name or remote location's name where you store or dump the entire raw code is known as code repository. Okay, that is a place where code is residing. Who manages that code repository? It is you as a DevOps person who manages that code repository. So, point number one, in the development of an application's life cycle, the code which all the developers write, they dump into the repository, and that repository is managed by DevOps. So when I say dump the code, That terminology used is to check in the code or commit the code. Okay, I would not repeat the word as dumping or placing or keeping the code. I would simply say checking in the code or committing the code into the repository. Okay, now what is a code repository and what exactly it is, we'll understand it later. So for now, it is very crucial for you to understand, okay, there is a code repository where all the code of the application is kept or checked in, which manages which is managed by, sorry, the DevOps team. Secondly, second point, if you remember, I told you is he says, the developer says it is working perfectly in my local, but what to do if that is working in his laptop or her laptop? It is nothing of productive level, right, to across all the teams. So we need to have some dedicated servers for all the environments. So what is an environment, sir? Environment is nothing but just a phase of an application's testing or deployment. I'll make myself more transparent and clear. Let us say that application is being handled in the coding phase now. So there needs to be an environment where all the developers can test the final product in their local servers. That environment is called as development environment. So there are different set of environments where this application travels, and this application is tested through a lot of use case scenarios in each environment. And finally, when this application passes through all the environments successfully, it is then deployed to production environment. What is a production environment, sir? Production environment is the last environment, which is nothing but a go live phase. It means that your application is live and it is open to internet. Okay, now coming back to the environment, what I was saying is when the application is handled by developers, okay, and that application is perfectly fine and the code is built or a code is checked in into the repository. Now, so please pay attention. One more important point which I am going to throw in your lap is not only you handle the code repository. See, if you handle the code repository, then what is the purpose? It is all raw code, right? It is written in some Python language or Java language or .NET language. You cannot do anything with that. You cannot just take the raw code and put in anywhere. It's just a .cs file or .java file or .py file. At the end of the day, it is a raw file. So in order to make sure that the entire raw code is perfectly in a state of working, you need to build that code. I'm using a term called building your code. What is the meaning of building the code, sir? I start from the beginning quickly. Please pay attention one more time. The developers write the code. It is all raw code, all loose files. They check in the code into the repository. That repository is handled by DevOps team. But the code which is there in the repository is useless unless it is built, because they are all loose files or all what you can say raw code files. So unless you built it, you cannot make the effective or maximum use of that particular code. So how you can do it? You can build the code. So what is the phase of building, sir? Who does that, sir? DevOps is responsible for building the raw code into some end artifact, end product. So what is building? Building is nothing but, in simple term, making sure that your raw code is in a state of deployment, making sure that your entire raw code is converted such that it can be deployed successfully. Deployed where? Again, coming to my point that we have different environments. We can deploy to each environment. Let us say the testers want to test it, but they don't have the access to servers. Why do they have access to servers? You are the DevOps person, you need to have access to servers. So what they'll do, they'll say, hey, we need to test this, and please make sure that the code is properly built and deployed to our environment so that we can test. So the developers will say, hey, I have written all the code and the repository is full of the end code. So please take from there, build it, and do whatever you want to do. So the repository is yours. You pull the code from repository, you do some blah blah blah, you build it. We will understand it later. What is blah blah blah? Okay, you build it and then you deploy it to testing environment. Okay, let us get back to this slide now. There is a phase called build, test, release, plan, and monitor. Building is nothing but taking the raw code and then converting it and producing an artifact. What is an artifact, sir? In this session, I'm using some terminologies like checking in, committing, or building, or artifact. You have to note down in mind because these are the keywords that I'll be using a lot frequently in the upcoming sessions. Okay, so artifact is nothing but the end product of building phase, and you build the raw code. Putting that in a single sentence, artifact is the end product of the code built. Okay, now what is testing phase? Testing phase is nothing but when you deploy the artifact to a testing environment, the testers will test. Okay, so who ensures that the artifact is properly deployed to testing environment? You as a DevOps engineer are responsible for doing that. And what is release? Release is nothing but once the QA team or the testing team signs off saying, hey, this artifact is working perfectly fine in our environment and you are good to go to deploy it in production and you are good to go live. So what you will do is you will take that artifact and you will again deploy into production environment and you will say it is released. Okay, now my application is live. So let us come back to the phase where developers were coding. So developers were coding, they checked in the code into the repository. You as a DevOps person pulled the code, you built it, you deployed to testing environment. The tester said, okay, fine. They gave a sign off. And then you as a DevOps person, you deployed again the same artifact, which was signed off to the production environment. Now everything seems good. Okay, this is how an application lifecycle works, and this is how your DevOps pitches in. And now I want to say a very beautiful line, which I often tend to say in my classes, is what is DevOps and how does DevOps fit in the picture of entire application lifecycle? People will say, hey, in the team, we only see a development team, either we see a testing team, or either we see maintenance team or support team. So but we don't see a dedicated team for DevOps. So I prefer to say them that DevOps is the team or a belt that binds all the existing teams. I repeat, DevOps is the team or a belt that binds all the existing teams. So let's say there is a development team, testing team, support team, or some other teams. Okay, as a DevOps person, you connect developers with testers in terms of environment. You connect a QA team with the maintenance team in terms of deployment. You make sure that the code repository is properly handled, and you make sure that the environments are properly maintained. You make sure that the deployments are happening properly. Okay, I would like to say that there are a lot of terminologies, there are a lot of understandings that are yet to be taken into consideration in terms of DevOps. But overall, if you understand this part of my session, it would be very easy for you to imbibe all the upcoming terminologies. Okay? Any questions for me?
Oh, no.
Thank you. So let's go forward quickly as we are short of time. So what I can do is I'll cover the maximum uh, the introduction here, and then if you have any questions or queries, we can discuss that tomorrow as well. So it's not just about uh, consuming time. It is all about effectively utilizing the time. So if you have any questions, queries, or something, you can straight away stop me, ask me anytime, or ping me in the chats. And so it's my agenda is not to cover up all the topics in a day. It's but most importantly, it's to make sure that you understand all the concepts. So now coming back to why do we need DevOps? Okay, it's all written on my screen. It's perfectly an easy way of handling the life cycle of an application. So just now we discussed how an application life cycle traverses from one team to the other. So you are make sure that you are handling it properly. And and now in the world of DevOps, the backbone or the heart of implementation is the automation. Okay, if you want to successfully say I'm a DevOps engineer, you need to understand that automation is your friend. You need to all see the scope of automations in every phase. So now if I say that now this is very interesting example. Okay, let's get back to the discussion that we were doing just now. Like the developers have been writing the code and they checked in into a repository, and you as a DevOps person are required to pull that code from the repository and deploy it into some environment. How do you automate that, sir? How do you make sure that you are properly pulling the code and you are properly deploying into some environment? So there are some set of tools, or there are some set of methodologies which DevOps provide, wherein you can properly automate the process of pulling the code, deploying it to environments, and ensuring that the deployments is successful. Okay, now this is an interesting part, right? Which is the reason you need to learn some tools that DevOps provide. I would like to pause myself here and tell you that the tools that we are going to discuss here in this session is the Jenkins is one tool, Nexus is another tool, and there are some integrations with Jenkins. One is Nexus and the other is SonarQube, and third one is Puppet that we'll be discussing. And although I have not planned to discuss Ansible in the session, but if time permits, I'll be very happy to discuss Ansible as well. And lastly, we'll be discussing Docker, the containerization. Okay. Kubernetes is not included in this session. There is a next batch which is dedicated for Kubernetes, so we can discuss about that later. It's very, what you can say, uh, very early for us to discuss about Kubernetes. So just to let you know that these are the tools, and coming to the code repository, we'll be discussing about Git, and on top of it we will have some scripting languages discussed. So based on your interest, if you guys want to learn bash scripting or if you want to learn PowerShell scripting, I'll be happy to teach both of them, but the curriculum says I'll be discussing bash scripting. So quickly I want to say yeah, the agenda I want to read out because I may be missing some of the points, right? So, what is DevOps? Revision control system? Yeah. So here in the code repository, I'll be discussing about Git, point number one. Secondly, in the build automation tool, I'll be discussing about Maven. Second. Thirdly, I'll be discussing about Tomcat. Fourth, I'll be discussing about Nexus. Fifth, I'll be discussing about Jenkins. Six, we'll have a discussion on Puppet and then Docker. Lastly, we will have a brief understanding of Azure DevOps. And I am planning to target for AZ900. So all the attendees of this session will be uh, highly confident and highly equipped with enough information to go ahead and write AZ900, which is a certification provided by Microsoft on Azure DevOps, which is Azure Fundamentals. So if you are interested, this session is exactly for you. I'll give you all the materials and everything. So that is the last portion of our DevOps. So it's not right for me to discuss it right now, because unless we have a clear understanding of everything I discussed in prior, it's very early for us to go with Azure DevOps. Any questions for me? I know there can be some questions in terms of the course curriculum and everything.
Yeah. How about Ansible?
Well, yes, as I just said, Ansible is not part of the curriculum, but yes, Ansible can be discussed. I've replaced Puppet with Ansible because either of the two tools are used for the deployment in the batches, for continuous deployment. Uh, so either I make use of Ansible or Puppet. So if you are interested of if the majority goes with Ansible, so we can replace Puppet with Ansible.
Yeah, actually, I see Ansible is like is been good now because
Hmm.
Puppet is something like pull based and Ansible is like a push based. So little bit like much more towards Ansible.
Okay, so I'll have a vote off. If not, then I'll have a separate session with you, if that makes sense.
Yeah, actually, I joined this class for Ansible, and I thought you will be teaching some Python scripting
Okay.
and something about Kubernetes.
Hmm.
Yeah, so these three are the topics that I'm interested into.
Okay, so coming to your question, see, Python scripting, we'll be teaching that minimally in terms of containerization. So when I do Docker,
Mhm.
I'll be writing some sample Python programs and everything. Coming to Ansible, as I said, I'm open to teach anything. So randomly, I gave Python in the curriculum because in the last batch it was Ansible, so I just switch it. So it's completely based on students' interest. Thirdly, talking about the Kubernetes, this batch does not include Kubernetes, sir, because it is a vast topic, and I feel we need to have a dedicated batch for that, and for which I handle separately. So upon a lot of requests and queries, I included Docker in this curriculum. Otherwise, we were supposed to have entirely DevOps tools and discussion more in detail. So there was separate batch for only for containerization, which included Docker and Kubernetes, including some POCs. So if you are interested in Kubernetes, we can go down to the training institute and have your query placed, and we can see that accordingly.
So as part of Docker, so what we are covering as part of Docker? Just a
Uh,
basic thing, or we'll be covering like um, running the containers, writing the Docker file, and regarding Docker Swarm as well.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Let me just read out what all things are there in the curriculum. So, starting from the architecture, I'll be teaching you how to create an image and how to write your own custom program. So, you will be a developer, you'll be writing some Python scripting, and then you'll be creating the image, and then you'll be deploying into container. And then, as you rightly said, I'll be demonstrating on the Docker Swarm as a master and slave architecture, and then how you
Mhm.
can deploy that image into the Docker Swarm, and then we'll learn about some Docker services. So on top of this, I'll be providing some detailed documentation, which once in a time I created in batches. So that is proved to be pretty much useful for the students. So you can keep that document handy with you.
Okay. So,
Yes, sir.
so everything will be done on Linux.
No, not everything. So this is a very good question. I wanted to call out in the last of my session, but before that, I wanted to see one thing. Yeah. So here is the best part about my sessions. I can proudly say is I don't do it on my local laptop. I request the attendees or the students to share their laptop and practice them doing it. So it is two things. I can randomly pick out somebody and say you have to share your screen today, or it is voluntary based. Today, if you are willing to do that, if two of them are willing to share, you can do it half of the time. So it's not about me doing it. So it's all dependent on what OS you have. Okay, I can show it on Windows or Linux. Both are perfectly fine. So if you in particular are interested in Linux, so we'll ask the other students to install Linux or create an EC2 instance for example, and then we can go ahead accordingly. Docker in particular, I prefer showing it in Linux.
Yeah, because I think DevOps engineer everyone will use Linux rather than using Windows. So we need to
Uh,
work on Linux more, right? So
okay,
we
just
need
to
to get
break.
all Linux commands and everything.
Okay, all right.
Yeah,
I can
I
say
prefer
Jude.
Linux.
Okay, I can say Jude has also called out for Ansible. So perfectly fine, sir. We'll go ahead with Ansible. If Ishaq and Gopinath, both of them are fine with it.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. This is Ishak. This is Ishak. Actually, I'm
okay.
unable to unmute my mic, so I dialed in from my phone.
Okay, okay. Perfect. Not an issue. So we can go ahead with Ansible. So it's kind of uh, we have time to discuss that. Firstly, we need to strengthen our basics. So I would like to stop myself here and understand your current uh, designation and your current roles and responsibilities.
Mhm.
Everyone can take some one minute of time and then let me know so that it would be easy for me to address accordingly.
Sure. Okay, you want me to start? Okay, I will start.
Yep.
So, guys, this is Ishak here. So I work. I'm working as a QA automation engineer in Lowe's in North Carolina. So I have like 4 years of experience in automation. Yeah, that is from my side. So I have somewhat experience in DevOps too, but I'm not much experienced in Kubernetes and Python. So rest like I'm good with Jenkins, Git, Ansible, and Docker.
Okay, thank you so much, Shah. Jude, if you're listening to us, can you please go ahead? I think we have lost him. You're not audible, Jude. Meanwhile, I request Gopinath.
I think Gopinath left.
Oh, just now I think he dropped off. All right. So, sorry. Yeah, quickly, one more thing, because I see even Gopinath is from the testing background, and you also hail from the same background. So, one thing which I can show is how to integrate the continuous testing into the DevOps pipeline. So, that is also part of my syllabus. So, here what we do is a sample Selenium based project, we integrate that into the pipeline. And let's say if you are doing that with Azure DevOps, Azure DevOps itself is a big tool, and it's in itself is a ocean of all the integrations of existing tools into one. So Microsoft has done a brilliant job in integrating all the available tools. So if you want to uh, adopt to DevOps, you need not have to go for Git separately, Jenkins separately, Ansible separately. You can just go ahead with Azure DevOps as a single tool and then make use of a single interface performing all the DevOps related activities. So coming to my point, I'll be discussing on the integration of your test suites and how to run them, how to generate the automated reports in the Azure DevOps pipeline itself. So we can do that as well. That is part of my Azure DevOps discussion.
Okay.
Uh, I think Gopinath is trying to join back in. Oops. No. All right. So,
Hello.
who's this?
Yeah, this is Jude.
Yeah, Jude, sorry. Please go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I was having issues connecting.
Okay, no problem. Can you please go ahead?
Yeah, presently, I have no IT experience, and I've been studying DevOps on my own, so I've I understand some parts of it, Jenkins, and understand how it works. So
Okay, so Jed, one thing which I wanted to call out is although some of them here come with some basics of DevOps, and some of them with niche understandings of DevOps, and some of them with no understandings of DevOps. So I'll be discussing from the scratch to the grounded level. So it's not about me considering that okay, this is a very small thing and you guys should be aware of it. And no, I try my best to cover all the, all the areas and all the small concepts. So if at all you are facing any challenge in understanding, or if at all you're facing any difficulties in uh, in your practice or something, you can raise a flag, or you can drop me a message anytime. Okay.
okay,
All right. So today, I think we have gathered some basics of SDLC and other places of DevOps. Tomorrow, I'll be starting a little more technical in terms of how DevOps fit in, and preferably, if tomorrow time permits, we'll start technically. We'll start with versioning systems. We'll start with Git. If not, then by tomorrow maximum, for sure, we'll start with the code repository. Okay.
okay,
I presume that you guys already have the course curriculum. If not, then you can go on to the website, which Gupta sir will share. On the website, the entire course curriculum and syllabus is already there. If not, then you can ask me. I would be able to send you as well. So, last thing, any questions for me before we wrap up?
no problem.
Okay. So, just to summarize, today we have discussed the introduction or the understandings of DevOps, half of it. Tomorrow we'll finish the half of it, and preferably, preferably by tomorrow or day after tomorrow, we'll start digging in the technical part. So one thing, when I'm saying technical, DevOps is not entirely technical, so don't get afraid. It's more of functional based. It's more of tool based. So why is it easy for everybody to migrate to DevOps? Is it's not more of technical oriented technology or methodology. Okay, so don't get carried away by saying, okay, I hate programming or I don't like programming. Programming is nowhere in this DevOps. So as I said in my session, that the backbone of DevOps is the automation. So in terms of automation, you need to have a little understanding of scripting, and that scripting is very, very, very easy. So when I'm saying three times very, it should be slightly a little more easier than what I'm saying. Okay, so don't get afraid. It's completely on me. I'll be taking charge of teaching you perfectly about all the scriptings, tools, methodologies, And one good thing is you can stop me anytime. Don't feel shy, don't feel hesitated. You can stop me anytime, ask me silly doubts, we'll address them. And if at all your question is a little time consuming, you have my number, you can reach out to me anytime. Okay, so this is me, Hashim. We'll sign off today and we'll meet again the same time tomorrow. I hope you guys have a good night and good day.
Yep. Good. Thanks,
So
Ashish.
guys, this is Kumar here. Do you have any questions as we wrap it up? Do you have any questions for Ashim sir? Anything that you wanted to ask or? Okay. Uh, so guys, can you please introduce yourself? I mean, are you there? All of you, are you there on the WhatsApp group that we are maintaining so that, it will be possible for us to make a future communication? We have Ishak, we have Jude, we have Srikant, and then there is caller 2. So I know Srikant and Isha is already there on the group. So Jude, so are you interested if you want to proceed further? So do you know where to reach out to? Okay. And then there is caller 202 as well. Quickly, can you please introduce yourself? I mean, who is it?
Yeah. This is Isha. So I'm unable to unmute my mic, so I dialed in from
Okay.
phone.
Okay. Fine. So you're already there on the group. So we can communicate. You know where to reach out to if you wanted to continue. And mm, thanks, Ishak. So, Jude, I mean, if you're not able to unmute yourself and speak, you can put it down on the chat window. Okay. So, Hashim sir, can you please show our website and the phone number in case the students want to reach out to us? So,
Yeah, sure.
Jude,
Sorry, I was speaking on mute. Sure.
okay, no issues. So, Jude, not sure, whether you have issues with unmute yourself and speaking. Okay. So, okay. Yeah. It's J actually. It's J. Okay, Jude, I got it. Okay, you are already part of the group. I understand, Jude. So I've checked your WhatsApp message on the group. Fine, wonderful. So I have your numbers, all of your numbers. Okay, we'll carry on from there, and I'll let you know when the regular session starts. Mostly it will be from tomorrow. So please reach out to me if you would like to continue further, or if you have further questions and then you wanted me to answer or Hashim sir answer, let us know. We'll certainly help you out with it. Okay. So thank you for joining us. So the session got recorded. The recorded session will be shared with you shortly on the group. So thank you so much. Take care. Bye-bye.